Hi there, this is a new books video and I want to start with a consideration. There's a lot of Sams in this video in the form of characters and I'm really thankful for what they've done for me. But I have to say I'm thankful to another Sam, a different Sam who's not a character. It's someone who's written an email to me months ago. I can't find it anymore. And I'm really sorry because I hadn't answered, but I just want to say thank you because I do remember the mail and to this day it warms my heart still, so thanks. But anyway, let's get started. I have a bunch full of books and most of them are suggestions. I've received tons of them and at first I was really bummed because I used to say, oh, come on, stop it, I'm going to read what I want to read anyway. But then someone wrote to me, again, that's my main interaction with other human beings, and said, you spend a lot of time telling us which books you've liked, so it's only natural and you should feel blessed because someone else bothers and tells you which books he or she has liked, so be thankful and read them. So I did a list and started reading them. Not all the books that are involved in this video are suggestions, but most of them. I'll start with those that I've chosen on my own. I think I've spoken about Graham Greene many times before. I may be mistaken, but that's the feeling. Anyway, I've been asked to give my personal opinion about The Quiet American, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to give new insight on this. I seriously doubt it. But anyway, here goes. Apparently, the idea of the story came to the author from a conversation that took place in a car, and specifically from a single sentence that went something like, probably it's possible to find a third force in Vietnam. The story takes inspiration from the author's personal experience as an agent for British Secret Services in Sierra Leone during the Second World War, and as a war correspondent in Saigon from the year 1951 to 1954. He was the correspondent for the Sunday Times and Le Figaro. It has two different timelines that intersect. One is the present and the other one is the past, with all its events that concurred in creating the present as it is. Obviously there's a love triangle because why would you miss it? It's a story about a British journalist who meets a young idealist named Alden Pyle. And the book has been blamed as the one who's made Graham Greene an interesting subject to American intelligence because it was often deemed anti-American. I personally don't find it anti-American, anti-war more like. And it's nobody's fault if often bombs in crowds were launched by American hands. It has to be considered, though, that George W. Bush has quoted the book during a speech about their behavior during the Iraq War, so that, I think, makes it pretty clear the story can be turned around and the accusation of anti-Americanism really doesn't stand. If you know me, even just a bit, you know I couldn't miss these. This is the Jane Austen Handbook. It's full of very useful suggestions as to how to decline an unwanted proposal, how to improve your estates, or, let's see, get him back after you have quarrelled, and the likes. Again, very useful. I suggest this to both ladies and gentlemen alike. The other silly book that I've chosen on my own accord is The Book of the Living Dead. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? It's a collection of short stories by Mary Shelley, Edgar Allan Poe, Lovecraft, Jack London, Mark Twain, etc. It's edited by John Richard Stevens. Now, obviously, if you have the collect works of these authors, you might already have these short stories. But, well, sometimes I'm asked suggestions for gifts, so if you know someone who's obsessed with The Walking Dead as much as I am, this might do the trick. I really couldn't miss this. The Book of Lists, London, by Nick Rennison. This is beautiful. It's obviously just a list of lists, but it promises to give something surprising to anyone, even those who were born and bred in London or those who claim to know it front, bottom and backwards. And for those who like Sherlock Holmes, rest assured, there's 10 Sherlockian sites around London. In case you're in town for a while, I think it would be extremely fun to take this as a checklist. Next is The Watcher in the Shadows by Carlos Riuz Zafon. Now this is the last one I've read from him. Came out in 2008 and again in 2011, but it was written in 1995. First came out in 1996. It's part of a trilogy. It's called the Trilogy of Mists. The first one is The Prince of Mists, second Palace of Midnight, and this one. Originally, the title is something like The Light of September. But I like The Watcher in the Shadows much better. It's the story of a mysterious toy maker who lives as a recluse in an old mansion. And the mansion is way too big for him alone, so he has populated it with mechanical and sometimes ominous-looking beings. It's a story of enigmas. Most of it is around the strange lights of the title. It's a story of love, family, trust, and friendship. I sometimes find Zafon's prose to be a little bit too heavy, like he's trying too hard to make it sound more old-fashioned than it actually is. But then he closes the chapters with these punchlines that are so effective and extremely enjoyable. So all in all, not only this is a lovable book, it's become one of my favourites of him. Okay, this was really hard. It's Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. And don't be tricked. Even if you see the Hamlet reference in the title, this is not going to help that much. The reference, obviously, it's just because the title is from Hamlet, Yorick, the court jester, and famous Carl was a fellow of Infinite Jest. It may be interesting to consider that the work-in-progress title of this was Failed Entertainment. It came out in 1996, and it's a dystopian vision of North America in the near future. Now, the events of the book happen in the year of dependent adult undergarment, and there's been speculation over which year of adult undergarment actually is. Might be 2009, 2008, 2011, 2015. Just as long as you have a November 4th as a Wednesday, that could be the year of dependent adult undergarment. The plot, partially, if you can actually talk about a plot in this case, but actually revolves around the missing master copy of a film cartridge, Infinite Jest. Apparently it's so entertaining viewers become lifeless and lose interest in anything other than watching it. There's such an intricate narrative and it's such a small print. It ranges from substance abuse to depression to advertising, movies, relationships, and recovery programs. It's really hard to follow. I deem myself a quick reader, but this took a while. And maybe even just because, you know, it's so big and bold and stares at you in the face and tells you, ha, you're gonna fail, you have to at least try and read it. I think the point of the whole book is really a failed entertainment. A jester, and all that's left of him is a skull. I don't know if that makes any sense. Maybe that's a failed entertainment and I'm a failed reader. But to me, the point is all about this. When something is put out in the world with one idea in mind and is perceived in a whole different way. Does it make any sense? Please, if you've read Infinite Jest, if you're going to read Infinite Jest, please come back and tell me what you think about it. Another suggestion, this was not as happy as all the rest, I might say. Anyway, this is John Cleland, Fanny Hill. Came out in 2 installments, one in 1748 and one in 1749. It's an erotic novel written while the author was in prison for debts, and it's considered the first original English prose pornography. One of the most prosecuted and banned books in history. It's now a synonym of obscenity. It's a story of a very young girl, she's 15, when she is initiated to lesbian sex, homosexuality, anal sex, masturbation and the likes. It has undergone pirate editions and underground distributions, so it would have been great on paper. But it ends in marriage, and that's a flaw to me. I don't know, maybe it's just me. The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood. This book is utterly beautiful. The language it's written in is amazing. Came out in the year 2000. And it's a spiral of stories within stories with a novel in it that has a couple of stories. It revolves around 2 sisters. One is called Iris and the other one is called Laura. Laura has committed suicide right after the World War II. It's a story of gradual revelation of the truth. And it's so clever, it's so pleasant to read. Suffice to say, my mom liked it, and my mom, she's picky. Next is the first Sam character. This is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It came out in 1999 and it was published by MTV Books in the US. And had I known this, I might have been put off, but luckily I didn't. Unfortunately though, while looking for information about this book, I found one I really didn't like. The movie's under production and Emma Watson is going to be starring in it as Sam. Charlie is going to be played by Logan Lerman, who you may know from Percy Jackson and I know from Gamer. I like the choice of Charlie, and I'm not sure about Emma Watson and Sam, because as much as I'd like to fight it, she'll always be Hermione to me. But anyway, let's see, maybe the hairdressers and makeup artists will do a great job. This is because Sam is an amazing character, as are all those that are in this book. I really liked it. It's the story of a 15-year-old, he's a freshman, and writes these letters to an anonymous receiver. It's quite clear about his wish to remain as anonymous as possible himself, and he really doesn't want answers about his receiver again. He just uses first names and really cares for others' privacies as much as his own. This book pays its tribute very kindly and gently to Catcher in the Rye. This is because it's a story of a coming of age, obviously, but again, it's very gentle, even though very serious themes arise as child abuse and being very different. Charlie is the main character, not only is a wallflower, he's a very unusual thinker. His brain works differently from anyone else's, but this turns out to be a perk. This is a book that can help you if you feel an outsider and you really don't want to be one. It's a story, I've already said it, of coming of age, growing up, finding friends, friendship and love, and how to deal with all this. And the most amazing part of this book is when Charlie describes first times, whether it's an experience, it's a particular feel of surprise or enthusiasm. There's this bit when he's driving through a tunnel with his newfound friends and they're hearing this particular song, and Charlie says he feels infinite. And you really do. I mean, you're taken there, and it's like your heart skips a beat because you're so excited yourself, just like Charlie. It's amazing. And I really hope you've ever felt something like this in your life, because if you have, you're going to recognize it. If you haven't yet, I might add, because I'm an optimist, this will tell you what's like, and it won't ruin the surprise. The second Sam is from Nick Hornby, Slam. He never misses these videos, does he? Surprisingly enough, Neil Gaiman does this time. But anyway, the first trivia about this book is that, it came out in 2007, and at first 600 copies were distributed in Southampton for free, just left around in town with a specially printed cover, encouraging residents to take me, read me, discuss me, and then pass me on, and then wait till it comes. Again, this is another story of coming of age. And just like the perks, it tells you you don't need to be afraid, but you'd better be careful. Because experience, unfortunately, doesn't pass hands, and it doesn't matter how many people you've seen making the same mistakes, you're going to do them too. This book is so clearly divided in two. There's the first bit where Sam, the main character, is oblivious of what's going to happen to him. You, the reader, are not, obviously. He's excited, thinking about what his life is going to unfold into, and he has this poster of Tony Oak in his room. Tony Oak is his life guru, really, and he spends his afternoons confiding his problems to it, the poster. The amazing part is that the poster actually answers. It's not a vision, though. There's nothing magical about the poster. It's just that Sam has read the Tony Oak's biography so many times, he hears the echoes of those sentences in his head. Whether they match the question he's posed or not, well, that doesn't really matter. It's normally helpful anyway. Then something happens, and it changes it all. First, there's a time travel. Second, there's a surprise that only surprises Sam, really. Because once again, you, the reader, have seen it coming. The good part is that Sam re-emerges from this experience completely changed, because he's got a glance of what his life is going to be, well, his options of what his life is going to be, and he comes back with one certainty. He now knows something that is going to be eternally there for his whole life. Now, to some, this might be a tragedy. For someone else, this is going to sound consoling. Thus arises the best part of this book. It's so lifelike. It's a shade of grey. You're not sure whether it's, again, tragic or funny, because it's real. I'm not even sure it has an happy ending. It has a real ending. It makes sense. The depiction of a 17-year-old boy makes complete sense. I've never been one, But I've been a 17 tomboy, so I can relate and it feels real. I think I've read this in 6 hours. I was so violently drawn to it because I wanted to see what the author was going to do with the story. The story is not completely original. You see it coming. When something happens, you were already worried 20 pages or so before it actually happens. But you want to see what Nick Hornby does with it. And what he does is turning it into the story of one life. And it may sound blatant or obvious, but maybe if you look closely enough, any life is interesting. And it's so catching you won't be able to put it down. This was hard. It's the orange girl from I've practiced is Jostein Gaarder. Something like that. Maybe the R's are more silent. But anyway, it's the same author of Sophie's World, which is a book I've hated. My dad had given it to me when I was way too young to read it, and I could feel it struggle in my hands because it didn't want to be read by me. At least this is the feeling that I have when thinking back to that book. It's the story of a 15-year-old who comes back one day to find that his dad, who died when he was 3 or 4, has left him an unexpected heritage. It's a letter. His dad was a doctor, and before dying he had the science enough to predict how much spare time he had and decided to spend it to write this crucial letter to his son. As I've mentioned, this book was really, really hard to me because I've risked losing my dad, and it's something that I don't find easy to think about. But this book was, in a way, an eye-opener because the main character decides to adjust this letter that his dad has left him with his own experience. And through it, he finds bits of this man who's his dad and he'll never know, bits about himself and about life. And this is extremely interesting, especially when you get to the crucial point of the book, which is towards the end. There's a question. And it's one of those existentialist questions, really. It's probably on the lines of, why do we live? And I've been asked to answer this question myself. I've tried to, but I don't want to spoil the book to anyone who might not have read it. So I'll answer it in a very cryptic way, and I will say I normally don't have a very good relationship with rules, but I try to understand them, dodge them sometimes, but understand them. So my answer is yes, no matter what. It's extremely moving. Just be careful because, I couldn't read this in public. This is probably the most suggested book of all. It's Howl's Moving Castle. Came out in 1986, the first of 3. The second is called Castle in the Air, and the third is House of Many Ways. Now, I had seen the movie from Miyazaki, 2004. Now that I've read the book, I don't like the movie anymore. Anyway, let's start with the book. Apparently the author was given the idea when a young boy asked her to make a story called The Moving Castle. That's it. The whole rest of it is pure inspiration, and it, I think, is plain fantasy from head to toe. Maybe apart from the whales bits. But anyway, it's a story of destiny, youth, courage and love. And the story itself is kind of plain, really. There's this girl, her name is Sophie. She's a firstborn, and because of that, she thinks she's doomed to failure. While her sisters, one because it's beautiful and the other because it's clever, may achieve whatever they want, she definitely won't be able. She's sure of it. She's not even fighting it. She has a job that likes but doesn't love. And, well, long story short, at some point at which takes a liking at her, she finds herself turned into an old lady and stumbles into Howl's Moving Castle. She knows about it. Anyone knows about Howl's Moving Castle and what a wicked wizard he really is. Turns out he's not that wicked, but he likes people to think he's wicked because that way no one's going to ask him anything. The bit about destiny, I think, is much clearer in the book than is in the movie. This, again, because Sophie deems herself as doomed to fail because of her birth, while Howl reckons he is the master of his own fate and is really happy about it. I think it's a story about finding your own place in the universe, because once in the castle, Sophie finds not only a family, she finds a place where she actually makes sense. She's never understood before why she is what she is, but in the castle she does, and ultimately, obviously, she finds love in it as well. And as far as trivia goes, the song that Calcifer sings in his little saucepan, it's a famous Welsh song, often sung at rugby matches. Again, I've loved the book. Personally, I think the whole charm of it is in the main character, well, not the main character, in Howl's character, because he's so charming and childlike, spends his days making tragic messes and breaking hearts, and all you want to do is pat him on the shoulder and tell him everything is going to be okay. But then, after I've read the book, I've decided to watch the movie again. And I've understood that Miyazaki has put his finger on something different. Maybe it's because the same story is washed from the other parts of the world, and the point is something else. Personally, the only fact that the movie has over the book is how Calcifer is depicted. Because I don't like the demon, greenish-like creature that Calcifer is in the book. But then again, in the book, you're free to see and imagine things as you like. So, but the movie, once you've read the book, it's too quick. There are so many bits that are not well explained, and not so sure. Beautiful, but not as beautiful as it was before. Last book that I'm going to talk about is Tom Holt's Life, Liberty and the Pursuit of Sausages. He's also the author of Blonde Bombshell, that came out in 2010, and this came out this year, 2011, and it's beautiful. It's so clever. Sometimes you suspect he's been possessed by Douglas Adams and is writing under automatic writing. To be honest, the ending of the book doesn't really match the rest of the book. To get there, though, the journey is amazing. You can zap from the intellect of a human being to that of a chicken to one of a pig so seamlessly. It's amazing. The structure of the universe, structure of the universe makes sense, is this trans-dimensional mess, but in the end it does make sense. These characters are taken into a whirlwind of happenings they don't understand. The reader kind of follows and sometimes is ahead, and that is pleasant because they're so confused. There are bits where the book is claustrophobic and you really don't see a way out, and you feel the pages going thinner and thinner this way, and you think, oh my god, he'll never be able to pull this together. But in the end, not only the story gives you hope, the book does. Maybe even just because in the universe we inhabit, Tom Holt lives. And that's it. I hope this was barely interesting, that maybe I've given you suggestions. Well, not me. We're passing around suggestions in this case, really. If you've already given me a title that you think I should read, just be patient, because it's going to be in my list and I'm going to read it eventually. Just in case I've missed something that you think I shouldn't have, send me an email, Phone Spring, Twitter, everything is down here in the doobly-doo. And as usual, I hope it wasn't too much of a bore, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye!